Grinders. Welcome to RotoGrinders Today. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderHD, BlenderHD. If you're going to follow me on Twitter, and it's Thursday, November 16th. We'll be taking a look at Thursday night football. The Ravens and the Bengals Showdown contests on DraftKings. So hit that like button first thing in the door. Give me those thummy thumbs. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. Join with me for actually probably maybe it could be a good football game tonight. Ravens versus Bengals. It's Will Priester. We're so used to doing these shows, and it's Thursday night football between garbage versus garbage. And what can we play? And do you like your lineups? I think this is a little different type of slate. I think we may actually see offense tonight, but the question is that who scores on the Ravens? If you could get that right, you're probably going to win.
Absolutely, Blender. And I must open this show with a shout out to the prop shop. I think it's a guy that said, I think his name is Alf is Real. I think that's who made the post, Blender. And maybe I'll just check right now and make sure I'm getting this right. But everybody in the prop shop was like, oh, this is going to be a good game. We're super excited about it. And Alf is Real says, final score, 9-7. And he was being funny, obviously, but that might be the best post of the day that I've seen in there so far. Because you know how this goes. It's these primetime games. I do think this one should have some scoring, for what it's worth. This one should have some scoring. These are two good football teams, to say the least. But, man, if it's low scoring, I'm still actually not going to be surprised. It is a division game, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, we already have stuff up here at RotoGrinders. If you're a premium member, we got the DraftKings Showdown HQ for Thursday Night Football, which includes all the information from our sims on construction types, on captain usage, everything like that. And also, if you want to try out our new Sim Labs, I believe it is still free. I haven't been told otherwise. Soon it's going to be going only for premium members. So if you want to take a look at the front end and build lineups based on our simulations, you can do so today. rotogrinders.com/simlabs. We'll take a little look at it a little bit later. But the squad, the total in this game is fairly healthy, right? We got a 46 total. We got a Lamar Jackson slate, right? So we got Lamar at quarterback. We got Burrow at quarterback. We got Chase there. Higgins is not going to be playing. So that'll open stuff up on the Bengals side. Is this going to be the game? We have the highest raw point projection on the slate is Lamar Jackson, but we've seen on these main slates the past 3 weeks that if you played Lamar Jackson, you'd look at the Ravens scores and go, well, my lineups must have done well. And then you see that they scored 90-plus points, and Lamar Jackson has like 2 touchdowns. He projects well. I mean, outside, to me, the Ravens are a tough team because you got Andrews, you got Flowers, you got Beckham Jr., you got Bateman, you got all the running backs, right? You got all of them. So you got Edwards, you got Mitchell, you got Justice Hill. Like, it seems like a ton of guys can score touchdowns from the Ravens. The thing about this is that it's on Showdown. So, like, if 4 different guys score touchdowns, like, it's still possible that none of them end up in the optimal lineup anyway, because they don't score more than 10 points. And Lamar Jackson, even if he doesn't put up 20, may still be one of the 6 highest raw point scoring players on the slate. Are you more or less likely to be more likely to avoid Lamar Jackson in your lineup tonight, Will? Or is it one of those Raven slates where Lamar's going to be in most of your lineups?
Yeah, for me, Blender, historically and even not historically, I'm probably going to have to play Lamar. Like, that's the trick.
You sound like you're not thrilled about doing that.
I'm not thrilled about doing it because realistically, Lamar is going to be one of the highest owned guys on the slate at captain and in the flex. And, typically, Blender, at quarterback, we don't need both. Usually we only need one. The problem is Lamar typically is responsible for almost all of the Ravens' offense and scoring. And that's why with Lamar, you just kind of have to play. I feel like I have to play him, even though the tournament player in me says I could probably fade him a little bit. I just don't think that's the right strategy for a team that's built around their quarterback contributing to almost all of the score. Now, I know Keaton Mitchell can rattle off a big run. I know they could hand it to Gus the Bus and he could rattle off, a touchdown inside. Like I conceptually I understand that, but Lamar, in a sense, he doesn't have to score 4 touchdowns. If Lamar has 80 yards rushing in this game and 200 yards passing and 1 rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown, like he just blew the slate wide open because of the rushing ability. It's just, and that's why you just have to play Lamar. I think the interesting thing to me, Blender, which kind of caught me off guard, Lamar wasn't the most expensive person on the slate, and that was a shocker for me just in general when typically he is on the Showdown slate.
Well, the thing is that with the Bengals, I mean, with Higgins out, Chase's target share is ridiculous, and it's a weird dynamic on the slate because Baltimore's favored by 3.5 at home, and projections are more likely to favor the Bengals side with the way that the Ravens play their offense. We see here in our Showdown HQ, which you get if you're a premium member. Click on that link in the description, get $10 off your first month. You'll get this content for every island NFL Showdown. So you get Monday Night Football, Thursday night, Sunday Night Football. But if we take a look at the roster construction breakdown based on our sims, they heavily favor the dog, right? They heavily favor like typically 5 1s with the favorite are much higher than this. We have a lot more lineups where you're plugging in 2 Ravens, 4 Bengals, 1 Raven, 5 Bengals, right? It skews a lot more towards the underdog. And I think it's more based on the dynamic that the Ravens have so many options to choose from that playing a lineup where you're stacking, let's say, Lamar Jackson with 4 other guys or 3 other guys, it's quite possible none of the other guys get there, even though Lamar gets there.
Yeah,
on the Bengals
absolutely.
side of the ball, it's so much more straightforward. I mean, obviously Burrow he can scramble, but he's not a rushing quarterback. We have Higgins out, so Chase's target share is high. Then you got Boyd at 6,800. You got Trent Irwin at 4,400. You got all their tight ends, and they rotate around, and they're fairly cheap. You got Joe Mixon at 9,600. And he's more of a bell cow running back. I mean, they'll mix in other guys every so often, like Travion Williams or Chris Evans or something like that. Just that the Bengals offense is so much more condensed than the Ravens offense that from at least a raw point perspective and a point per dollar perspective, you end up getting, like, if I just ran our current optimal, like you get Lamar in the captain spot, and you get Irwin, Boyd, Burrow. You basically get the entire Bengals kind of passing attack.
Exactly.
And some cheap Nelson Aguilar or something in there that I think tonight, I mean, it's going to be, these constructions are going to be popular, but it's going to be much more likely that you're plugging in 4 Bengals into your lineups more than the Ravens. The question is that if you do that, are you more likely to play a Chase at captain or a Burrow at captain? And I'm leaning more towards Burrow at captain than Chase, because if I'm already playing a multiple other Bengals, if those guys get there, I think it's more likely that Burrow is the winning captain than Chase would be.
Yeah, and I think in this case, Blender, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of how I'm interpreting what you're saying today is Burrow throws for, as an example, 4 touchdowns. Chase catches 1, Boyd catches 1, Irwin catches 1, Irv Smith catches 1. And while Jamar Chase may have 8 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown, Joe Burrow just blew the slate wide open to everybody.
Yeah, but even if he has 8 catches for 140 yards and a touchdown, I mean, he gets the bonus there, but when Burrow has 303,
right.
He's correlated with everyone else in your lineup. So, like, I'm looking more towards, I mean, we'll run some sims and see what it looks like. But I mean, I'm taking a look at this. Like we could look on Showdown HQ, which is our like output version of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it still shows that Chase has a positive expected value in the captain spot. So does Boyd. So does Burrow. So does Mick. It's like it's all these Bengals. Andrews is
Yeah.
lower. Flowers is lower, right? And we take a look at flex usage, right? It's less likely in flex than anything else. I mean,
Yeah. I
on
think,
the Bengal side, does it seem like to me? I mean, I'm talking about the Bengals passing game, but maybe it's Mixon that gets squeezed of all of these people. Like, if we take a look at just on the ownership, I mean, we have like Zay Flowers that may be higher owned than Joe Mixon because Joe Mixon's 9,600. I think the sneaky construction, if you want to build 4 Ravens, is to play Joe Mixon and the captain, because if so many people are going to be playing these passing pieces for the Bengals, how do those guys fail or don't live up to expectation? Doesn't mean they fail.
yeah.
Well, it's with Mixon getting falling in the end zone twice, and then the Ravens have to actually throw the ball, and you have multiple pieces on the Ravens on the other side.
I'm going to say this, Blender. I think what you shared just now, that's my, I'm going to call it my JM to win retro moment, right? I've said this 1,000 times because it really impacted my tournament playing over the years when I was a lot younger or newer, as I would say, when I was, trying to learn and grow. JM always said, have the imagination to basically paint a different outcome than what everybody else is telling you, right? And I'm saying that because if you're now saying or going with the notion that, hey, Joe Mixon has this somewhat nuclear game where he falls in the end zone twice, maybe he still only rushes for 50, 60 yards, but then he also has 2 or 3 catches, Blender, for 18 yards, right? Well, think about that. If he's got 60 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, that's 18 plus two, let's say 3 catches, that's 21 plus the other yards. He's now up to 22, 23 fantasy points. DraftKings scoring, by the way. And he's cheaper than most of these other pieces. Most of the other bigger pieces like Burrow, Jackson, Chase is what I'm saying. The big 3, right? And then you say, well, perhaps the Bengals are ahead and Lamar Jackson has to do all the throwing, and you build it that way. That's totally against the field now, but it's still a quality thought process, a quality build. And with 2 good football teams, I think for me, Blender, that's the way I want to approach this slate tonight, with that type of mentality where you look at all these good pieces, you say, well, this is the story I'm going to tell myself for this game. And not that you build every lineup like that, but Blender, once again, we could build 2 or 3 Joe Mixon captain lineups on this slate and get it right. And our other 20, okay, so what? Like, as long as we get the nuts in one lineup, that's all we're looking for. I love that strategy tonight. And especially with my not uncomfortability, but not necessarily wanting to go all in on Lamar. I think that's a great way to still get Lamar exposure, but build with a different thought process in mind. Love that call.
Right. Look at this 50K lineup. Mixon a captain, Irwin and Boyd, and then you play Jackson, Bateman, and Andrews.
Yeah.
You're basically not playing Burrow or Chase. And if that connection fails, I mean, this seems like a lineup that, I mean, you can build these types of lineups. Don't be stuck on you got to play Burrow, Jackson, Chase, and like in your top spot. And I'm going to assume that the Sims kind of point that out. I'm going to run this.
Well, and while you're doing that, Blender, I want to plug in something from Sunday when me and TJ were on that show. We looked at the slate, right? While you're running that, it's the same thing as today, Blender, just a different. We're kind of flipping it. We looked at the slate, and we said it looks like everybody wants to go all in on Jacobs and Breece Hall at the captain, right? And we're sitting here, and I'm saying, no, I think I want to build with Garrett Wilson at the captain, right? And Blender, if you watch that show, we didn't do anything spectacular. We literally just said we're going to get off of this massive running back captain exposure. We went in with Garrett Wilson, and then Blender, we built with some of the running backs, one of the quarterbacks. and we knew the kickers were going to play a factor in that game on Sunday night. But my point is this, Blender. We didn't do anything too outside of the ordinary. And if you looked at the winning lineup from Sunday, it was Garrett Wilson, captain, one of the quarterbacks, both kickers, one of the running backs, and a cheat receiver or something like. So you didn't have to go way off the reservation to win. You just had to think of a slightly different lineup construction. And that's Showdown at its finest. And I'm saying that to just support what you're talking about. Like, I don't want people to overlook the fact that Joe Mixon at the captain tonight is going to be so much more different than what everybody else is going to be doing.
Okay, so I'm using SimLabs, and I'm doing this just for research. I'm just looking for large, like, I want to compare for large field contests. I want a very wide results range, which means I'm going to get a lot of wide variety of lineups, even with like Drew samples in it and stuff like that. I'm purposely in the advanced section, if I can click over, prioritizing basically, I just want our simulations, so game play-by-play simulations, and I want to focus on that and optimal rates. So like these rates that we have right here, right? That's what ownership means. It doesn't mean high owned. It just means who's more likely to be in the optimal lineup, right? The top, like Lamar Jackson, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd. It's going to focus more on these players. The lineups may actually be low owned in combination, but it's going to focus more on these players than on ones that have very little, very, very low optimal rates, right? And when you use SimLabs, I want to make it clear because people get this perception that this is an objective source. SimLabs doesn't give you bad lineups. Okay? There's no such thing as this lineup is good and this lineup is bad in SimLabs. It's only good or bad in relation to how you weight things. So understand that when you're using SimLabs for Showdown, let's say, same thing for Main Slate, we have already simulated everything out, right? This is a lineup generation tool. This makes it easier for you than using Lineup HQ. Lineup HQ, it's dumb. It's just a linear solver. It's going to do whatever you tell it to do. And if it gives you bad lineups, that's your problem, right? SimLabs already takes care of all of that balance. The leverage, the correlation, the projection, it's already in there. And we've already simulated everything out for all these contest sizes. So let's say there's a grand total of 50,000 lineups that you could play, right? I don't know the exact number, but let's just say in a Showdown, there's 50,000 combinations. There's only like maybe 5,000 that are potentially plus EV. Those other 45,000 lineups, you can't get them. Okay? So picture like we've already made it. So here's your 5,000 lineups that could possibly, I'm just making up numbers. This is just understand the concept. Here's 5,000 lineups that are all competitive. Some may be higher EV than others. That's for you to judge. But here's 5,000 lineups that if you were to play any, if you were to randomly take 20 of these, you're fine. Now, they all have different outcome types. So some may have one, this lineup may have a 12% ROI, but it relies on the chances that the Ravens blow out the Bengals. This other one has a 12% ROI, and it relies on realizing its ROI by when the Bengals blow out the Ravens. And then you get everything in between. But if you ran it out a million times, all these lineups are close to equal to each other. So the only thing that you have to do is decide which ones you want to choose. So when you go into SimLabs, like any weights that you put on, it's like out of these 5,000 lineups, any of them are fine. What do you prioritize more? Do you want lineups that are heavily correlated? Do you want lineups that you don't care about correlation? Because there's all different types. A heavily correlated lineup could have the same ROI as this lineup that has almost no correlation. Looks completely weird, but the way that it gets there probabilistically is about the same way that this lineup gets there probabilistically.
And can I interject here, Blender, for 1 second? So you have to understand, too, guys, that what's behind this and what we're doing. If any of you were Fantasy Labs users back in the day, right? If you had Fantasy Labs, if it's NBA, golf, MLB, NFL, doesn't matter. there were these sliders, right? And there were these weights, and you could say, like for me in MLB, I weighted strikeout rate of opponent and strikeout weight of the pitcher a little bit more heavier in my particular model that I created, and so my results were probably going to, in terms of how they rank the pitchers, was going to be different than your results if you weighted a certain way. And so for Blender, for you, and same thing with Golf Blender in Fantasy Lab, you might weight something different this week than you do this week because you read Noto's article and he said, hey, tee to green is going to be better this week than strokes game approach. And so you go in and you change your weights to fit kind of the course for that week. And then it's going to rank these golfers in a different way. And so I think in terms of sim labs, in my opinion, it's a similar thing where, like you're talking about weighting, you're going to say, well, I'm going to weight this a little bit higher this week. So my group of 150, if we just went 150, may be slightly different than yours, but the common denominator is all the lineups are good. All of them. Back to you, my friend.
Right. So, like, if we take a look and, like, based on my weights over here, this lineup sim lab rating is 95.47. It's quite possible that you could look at this lineup and you weight things way differently, and the rating of this lineup would be 72, right?
Correct.
When you run it with your, like, with whatever, understand that any lineup that comes out of Sim Labs is going to be a competitive, profitable lineup in the long run, in concept, theoretically, right? So it's not a matter of like, well, what's the right weightings? There is no, like, literally. This is one of the most important parts of using this tool. If you were to change the weighting and run 150 on every single weighting, every single setting, every single thing, and each time randomly selected 150 lineups or 20 lineups or one lineup, and you played today's slate out a million times, you would end up with about the same amount of money at the end. I could close my eyes and select any lineup out of this that I want, and it's a profit, and it's a theoretically profitable lineup. Okay, so people in our Discord, well, what's good for today? It's whatever you want to be good. Like, we've already weeded out the bad lineups, so now you're just selecting. Like, imagine having a jar of jelly beans. Right? It's all blue jelly beans, right? 50,000 blue 45,000 blue jelly beans and 5,000 red jelly beans. Lineup HQ is, well, feel free to use the settings you want in order to find those red jelly beans. Those are those profitable lineups. You have to kind of piece it together. Should it be more correlated? Should it be this? All those balances you have to do yourself. SimLabs does that for you. So that's the equivalent of, instead of us giving you, here's a tool that you can make any of the 50,000 lineups you want. Good luck finding the 5,000 that are actually good. We've taken out all of the red marbles, all the red jelly beans, and put them into another basket and go, here's all of them. Grab a handful. It's like they're all red jelly beans. Like, have fun. If you like, I like the ones that are a little bit more oval. I like the ones that are a little bit more. Feel free, go. Feel free to do whatever the hell you want with that. So that's the usage of this tool. Okay, if you approach with the mindset that you're not getting bad lineups, it's just what types of, now there's subgenres of all the different types of profitable lineups, and you get some of them that are like Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, Bateman, Aguilar, and like basically the Ravens passing game, and then you'll get ones that are like. They'll have Justice Hill. You have Keaton Mitchell in here. You'll find very similar types of things. Here's one with Jamar Chase at captain, and then 5 Ravens, which includes the defense. Like, this is just as viable as this lineup right next to it. I mean, look at the differences between these two lineups. You couldn't get any more different, practically. Right? One is just, Chase is the highest scorer, and then no one else on the Bengals gets there, and the defense does well. And this one is like, okay, here's a super passing stack for the Bengals, right? You get one. Here's Keaton Mitchell. Here's a passing stack. Here's the 2 defenses, Keaton Mitchell, Mixon, Burrow, and Chase. And you'd be like, but the type of game that this lineup does well in is like totally different than the lineup. That's right. but the probability of both lineups is about similar to each other.
And here's the thing too for me, Blender, that I also like about Sim Labs. For a guy like me, especially in Showdown, when I feel like a guy is optimal but not good enough to be captain, I can absolutely still lock him in and say, hey, I want 100% of this guy in the flex, right? And then it'll spit out every good lineup built around that one person. So let's say tonight, Blender, for me, that person is Tyler Boyd, where I say, hey, Tyler Boyd might not, and I'm not saying this actually, I'm just saying theoretically, Tyler Boyd doesn't feel like the captain to me, but he does feel like he needs to be in every lineup. I can literally go in, 100% Tyler Boyd, rerun it, and get every single build around him, and all will be quality lineups. And that's something else that I think, people need to understand. Like, those are some of your tweaks that you can put into the system, and then let it do all the other work for you as well. So there's still things you can do to get to where you want to go in terms of how you may think the game's going to go or whatever. Like,
right, and you only want to select the lineups that go with that.
Yeah.
You could, like DFix says in the chat, it's like, well, they're all plus EV lineups. You still have to think through diversification. Diversification isn't a strategy. It's a matter of, I'm playing 20 lineups. Do I want to play all? You can play 20 lineups as if the Bengals blow out the Ravens. But the thing is, you want to find the lineups that go along with that through SimLabs, because SimLabs ain't going to give you bad lineups. So it's like, oh, I want to X out Lamar Jackson. I'm going to find lineups that fit that story and play 20 of them. Now, if the Bengals don't blow out the Ravens, you're going to lose pretty much all 20 of your lineups, which is fine. But if you want to diversify and you're like, okay, I'm going to build lineups that are 5 lineups in SimLabs that benefit from the Ravens blowing out the Bengals, and I'll play 2 of those. And I'm going to find 2 that the other way around. I'm going to find 4 double defense lineups. Just find, like, instead of trying to build double defense lineups yourself, why don't you just go into SimLabs and go, let me just find a double defense lineup that, based on our simulations, actually does make sense and is plus EV. That's the purpose of the tool. You don't start from who's in the lineup. It's like, no, here are the lineups. Find the ones that you want to play, and we'll take care of the rest. We'll make sure that your duplication is not, it's already factored in. Your leverage is already factored in. Your projections it's all factored in already. Okay? So Bacon23 says, is there any point to use this and then put into my Theory of DFS portfolio trimmer? No. The purpose of the portfolio trimmer in the Theory of DFS tools, which you can get at theoryofdfs.com, is using ownership sum as a blunt way of trying to find balance after using lineup HQ. SimLabs, if you are using the RotoGrinders projections and ownership, already do that for you. If you're not using the RotoGrinders ownership and projections, if you're like, I don't trust you guys, I'm going to change someone's projection to, if you're going in going, I'm going to bump down Lamar Jackson to 18, I'm going to bump Tyler Boyd up to 15, like, dude, those numbers aren't in SimLabs. Only these numbers are in SimLabs. So if you're using some other source of projections and ownership, like, SimLabs doesn't reflect that, or only reflects the RotoGrinders projections and ownership. So that would be a time where you'd use a more blunt method of using the Theory DFS portfolio trimmer. But if you're a premium member here at RotoGrinders and you trust our models, you trust our simulations, this is the front end to use. I build my lineups now using SimLabs primarily, looking through here, rather than hacking together stuff in lineup HQ. But of course, maybe if I see let's say a player, Will, like we were talking about before, if it's like Joe Mixon, 31% owned, let's just say I think he's going to be lower owned than that in the flex or in the captain. Let's just say, look at the captain. We have him at 7.66% owned in the captain. Let's say I personally think the field is going to play him less than the captain. Okay? Now, if he's going to be played less in the captain, that means other guys are going to be played more in the captain. Maybe now because of that, I'm going to go through and find the Joe Mixon lineups that I want to play. But I realize that SimLabs is acting as if Joe Mixon is 7% owned. I'm thinking he's 3, which means because SimLabs thinks he's 7, it's going to add a little bit more leverage, right? Because it's going, oh, you're playing a higher owned captain, so we have to jam in like some lower owned players in there. But I know, or I think Joe Mixon will be lower owned, which means maybe I'm looking for Joe Mixon lineups that aren't as low owned because I'm thinking that the leverage is better on Joe Mixon. So maybe I'm not going to find the lineups. It's going to tell me to play Isaiah Likely or something in a lineup or Drew Sample. And I'll like, nope, I think Mixon gives me enough leverage as it is because I think he's going to be lower owned. And I skip those lineups and play lineups that look like they're going to be actually higher owned. Right. So you could even do that with SimLabs, and go through and go, oh, I think I can play this lineup. Do I have to play Justice Hill? Like if I sort right now by Mixon captain lineups right here in what we just built, let's click on that. Right. So if I go through, I think Joe Mixon is lower than 7% owned in the captain. So do I have to play Justice Hill? No. So screw it. So I won't play that. Then I take a look at this. I go Evan McPherson. I go, oh, this lineup has $50K salary and uses, Evan McPherson. It's like, maybe I can use that because I think he's going to be lower owned here, right? I go through these lineups and I go, I don't want to play. I don't want to play. Do I have to play Travion Williams in a Joe Mixon captain line? No, I don't. I don't think so. Now, if you think Joe Mixon is going to, let's say for whatever reason, you think Joe Mixon's going to be 20% owned in the captain. He's not, but let's just say, what does that mean? Well, SimLabs is treating him at a 7%, which means based on your assessment of how owned Joe Mixon is going to be, some of these lineups aren't low owned enough. So you have to now go, okay, well, now I need to find really low owned shit, right? To make up for the fact that I think Mixon is higher owned. So you can even bluntly use SimLabs in that regard of, well, this guy's higher owned, this guy's lower owned, and find your lineups there. This is the best way for those that don't have a good methodology of balancing projection, correlation, and leverage to just find the full lineups. Remember, Will, lineups, not players.
Absolutely.
You're looking at you're not looking at players. You're looking at lineups. You're going, okay, I like that lineup. And you could go through and you could run multiple sets. You could run as many as you want, different size fields, different results ranges, different weightings. You could run 20 of each captain and go, I'm going to pick a couple of lineups out of this. And you could save them to your saves lineup section. Then once you're, let's say you're playing 40 lineups. It's like you're at 40. There you go. You picked out the lineups. That's it. I know I've been doing these tutorials on SimLabs, but I think it's very beneficial because a lot of people are not necessarily understanding exactly what this tool does. And they're trying to treat it like it's lineup HQ when it's not.
Right, correct. And I think that's why I went back to kind of the old school days talking about fantasy labs in terms of how it worked. Because if you understood that, or if anybody's used fantasy, like you should be perfectly fine with SimLabs. At least, getting started and of course, watch the tutorials from Blender and other people and kind of hop in and do your thing. The other thing too, once again, for Showdown specifically, like this is the ultimate tool, I think, Blender. Now, of course, for NBA where things are just all over the place, you're going to need lineup HQ for now. If they figure out SimLabs for NBA, they need a Nobel Peace Prize.
They're working on it. Jimino's working on it. That's going to come out. FanDuel. We're also going to come out with FanDuel. They're working. I mean, that's why it's in beta. That's why it's only available for DraftKings main slates and captains. Right? DFix says it perfectly in the chat. It's much more enjoyable to have good lineups to choose from and then use your, do you like these guys' mentality than the other way around. Right? Yep. So look through and go, if you don't want to play Justin Hill, just don't select the Justice Hill lineup. Any lineup, all these lineups are fine. So you can just go through and go, you can use the exclude players function and go, I'm not playing Gus Edwards. I'm not playing the guy and the captain. He'll go, okay, well, then we're just not going to show you those.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfectly fine to do that. And then find the ones that fit what you want to do and select those.
Yep. And that's the beauty of Sim Labs. And for Showdown specifically, Blender, right now, this is, to me, and obviously I work for the company, built the company a long time. This is the premier access point for Showdown right now in terms of building lineups, because you do have all those other options. It's not like we're just giving you the lineups and you have to play them, right? Like, you can make tweaks. Like, that's the thing too. Like, tweaks can be made to what you're trying to do. You can still go in, like I said, and say, hey, I want Tyler Boyd 100% in the flex. I want Lamar, 40% in the captain, and Chase 40% and Burrow. You can still do all that, and it's going to give you the best lineups that are going to fit
to that.
Yeah, fit
and also, Will, what it will also do is it won't give you the line. Like, if you put in stuff where it's not a profitable lineup, it won't give you that.
Right.
Like imagine it's not going to show you a lineup that leaves 40,000 on the table and has like Drew Sample in the captain, right? Like right. You're going to play all the 800. Like, it's never going to give you that. Lineup HQ could technically at some point give you that type of lineup based on how much constraints you put in. It can't give you that lineup. So if you put in, let's say you put in some weird thing, I want to play defense in the captain and kicker captain with no Lamar, no Burrow, and leave 17,000 on the table, you may press the button and you know what happens? You get back 0 lineups. And then if you go, well, I want to play that type of lineup, it's like, well, then go to Lineup HQ and build that lineup. But SimLabs is essentially telling you that lineup sucks, right? What you're trying to do sucks, right? Or you're putting in, like, I want these 2 players and those 3 players and this thing like that, and you get like 3 lineups back. And you're like, well, I don't like any of these 3 lineups. Well, we're telling you that those are the only 3 lineups that can fit to your whatever requirement that actually is plus EV. If you want to do anything different from that, well, that's not what SimLabs is for. We're telling you based on the simulations, these are the only lineups that kind of fit that we have in our set of plus EV lineups. Okay?
Yep. Absolutely.
Another thing tonight, Will. Props and pick 'em. You mentioned the prop shop before. People could join that rotogrinders.com/discord, right? I know it's a lot to take in when you first get there.
Yeah, listen, props and pick 'em. I will have some exposure to this game, obviously. For me, I do like Lamar Jackson rushing quite a bit tonight. He's at 43.5. He has been a lot higher than that some slates, a little lower than that some slates, but at 43.5, that's one of my top options tonight. For those of you that utilize the Blitz or have a Blitz subscription, like, you can go there and check and see what the Blitz has for him tonight. I will tell you, the Blitz does have him for 58, so that's a pretty good differential for me in my book when the sites have him around 43.5. So that's just something I check just to see and have a nice reference point. Another one that I like, that I put a video, I do like Patrick Queen more than 7.5 tackles, especially when I know that Joe Burrow gets used like a bell cow. Typically running backs create a few more tackles for linebackers. Queen has been over 7.5 tackles in over 60% of his games this season. So that's something else. That's one that I'm looking at. And then for me, Blender, the Ravens do have some defensive players out, and so one of their best cornerbacks is going to be out tonight. So I am going to be a lot higher on the Bengals passing game, because I do think that's a factor. So that's one of those things where I'm personally saying, okay, if a couple of these, we've got Marlon Humphrey out of the game, who typically would have been shadowing Chase. Chase is not going to have that same type of elite level coverage. Maybe they bracket him. Maybe they do some other creative things. But even if they do that, that's still going to leave spots for Tyler Boyd. It's still going to leave spots for Irwin. Still going to leave spots for Irv Smith. So I like I like that ideology in terms of even how I'm going to attack props tonight. Obviously, I'm still going to, check the odds. I'm going to reference the projections and just, get a feel. But I do like this passing game for the Bengals quite a bit tonight. So Burrow, Boyd, Chase, Irv Smith. I think Irv Smith is at 1.5 receptions. That's one that I feel like I'll take a stab at in a game where I think they're going to be passing the ball a little bit.
If you want to get our props and pick 'em package, you can get that as a premium member as well as standalone. We also got basketball tonight. Sometimes, you see the free pick. We have a prop model. I use our NBA projections. I use our NHL projections. Charlie Wright has the Kyle Lowry over 12.5 points and assists at -122. I believe I already put in. I have Lowry's PRA, so I think I have it all.
Yeah, he was down to 16.5 today, which was absurd. But it's basically had 3 fouls in the first quarter, and that pretty much killed him the last game. Lowry basically cost me 8.25 the last game. Doesn't matter. Now the books have dropped him, right, because of that performance, because they're just basically right now going with an average. And now the average is all skewed because he only had, I think, 4 or 5 PRA in the last game. And so now we get him at 16.5, which is very advantageous for us. Blender, even if you – gosh, man, we have so many tools for you. But for those of you that are in our premium projections, we've got the stat level projections as well that you can go and look at and just get a nice reference. Blender, for Kyle Lowry today in terms of PRA, our projections have him at 20.5. So it's to me, it's kind of a no-brainer. Points and assists, we've got him at 15. I think you take them all, Blender, as you've said. Kyle Lowry is a good proposition today, whether he hits or not. This is a good spot with no Tyler Hero in the building.
Right. I think I took his assists, his rebounds, and his PRA. I don't think I took his points over. Whatever number and price is there wasn't good enough for me.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
PRA where. I mean, really good today.
Right. But you can see all of our expert picks on the props and pick'em package. Right. You can see our props. We have a props tool, a pick'em tool that imports basically all of those projections. We have a Chrome extension that if you're using Prize Picks and Underdog, it will overlay our stat level projections over the boxes and over everything. So you can just scroll and see which ones, this one's too low, this one's too high, and feel free to make your cards there and then share them and talk about them in Chiefs Prop Shop. RotoGrinders.com/Discord. Join there. You can join my channel also. If you want to talk to me anytime, that's the place to go, right? Blender's Game Theory. If you're a premium member at RotoGrinders, and you can do that by clicking on the link in the description. You get $10 off your first month.
Blender, let me say this one last thing before you close out. I can't stress enough, especially for NBA and hockey, like especially, this pick'em tool is gold. Especially Blenders, you're going throughout the day. It's even though I've got the Chrome extension as well. But what the pick'em tool does is it's going to give you things that you should be playing right away, like in one spot. You just pull it up. It says, okay, this. Okay, you type it in, you plug it in. I found, Blender, especially in the fantasy points arena right now, the fantasy points projections have just been off on the pick'em sites. Like they've just been off, right? Like for
some of them have taken them down. Well, have you seen some of them actually aren't putting as many up as they used to?
Right. So, and I want to give people a handful of them. Like Jalen Suggs, Blender, started the season, I think, at 19.5 fantasy points. He's been up to like 21, 22. Jalen Suggs has been somewhere between 25 and 30 most nights. And last night he was up to 22.5, 23.5. Our sheet is our pick'em tool is still telling us, hey, we need to be taking advantage of that. Finished with, I think, around 24, 25, somewhere between 24 and 27. It doesn't matter. But the fantasy points, they've been way off so far. That will normalize, but I did want to point that out for people that our projections right now are going to be very advantageous versus the pick'em sites until they get a few more weeks probably under their belt. So once again, like Klay Thompson the other night, Blender, and guess what? He failed that night. Klay Thompson was at 23 fantasy points. Now, hear me out. He didn't get it that night, but he's playing on a back-to-back. The next day he's at 24. Guess what? He put up 28 fantasy points. So the other thing I want to stress is if a play misses one night, it's okay. That doesn't mean the projection wasn't great. Just go right back to it the next time, especially if they miss. They're not going to bump it 5 fantasy points because it missed. It's going to stay relatively the same. So anyway, I'll shut up, Blender, and let you close this out, but did want to point that out. Fantasy points have been really, really good, along with everything else. But I just wanted to point that out specifically.
What else do you got going this week, content-wise, for NFL and everything?
So I have my owner's box short out. I have the owner's box article out tomorrow. I'll be on the Blitz show. I'll be putting out some stuff for Stat Hero. Stat Hero has their Beat the CEO contest going, so I have some stuff out for that. And then, of course, Sunday Showdown. Myself and TJ, I think, will be on for Sunday Showdown. And if you caught last Sunday Showdown, you should have made tons of money because we pretty much gave you the nuts on the show. And so hopefully we can do that again this week.
We'll have more Showdown content tonight for premium members. We got Noto stuff. We got tons of NFL stuff tomorrow. We got Squirrel Patrol will be on with me, talking about game stacks, team stacks for the Week 11 DFS strategy for DraftKings. So check all of that out. Prize picks, underdog, props. We got all the models. We got all the statistical projections. We got a big HL slate tonight. We got crunch time for NBA. There's only 2 games tonight, but there's still a 2-game slate. We got college football. We got college football projections. I'll be hammering those college football projections tomorrow. I'm hammering the NFL projections today. So be on top of it. Get all the information. Click on that link in the description. Become a premium member. Access our premium Discord. RotoGrinders.com/premium. $10 off your first month. And hit that like button on your way out the door. If you're not going to pay, at least pay with a like. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell to always know when we go live on the channel. I'll see you tomorrow. So I'm always here weekdays, 11 o'clock in the morning, talking about all things you're thinking about in daily fantasy, props, and pick'em on RotoGrinders Today.